We're good to go.
Hare Krishna. So welcome everybody. Today's topic is maintaining positivity in times of uncertainty. To maintain anything is hard work. Therefore, maintenance is taken care of by Vishnu, the Supreme Lord himself. To build something up is quite easy. It just requires an idea and mode of passion, some energy. And to destroy it is also quite an easy task. But to maintain anything, that is hard work. Have you ever wondered how hard it is to maintain relationships or projects or even your own spiritual practice? It requires constant effort, constant endeavor to actually keep it up. So that is in the category of Vishnu. And when we slack from that, then again, things, they deteriorate and they get corrupted. Now, the mode of ignorance is characterized by fear, because fear arises when we're forgetful of who we are and what our relationships are, what our connection is with the Supreme. Just like if you're disconnected from light and it's darkness, then naturally fear arises. You remember the natural occurrence that when it gets dark and there's just, you can't really see your step, you don't know where you're moving, you don't know where you're heading, it's very easy to become fearful. But as soon as the sun comes out, that fear goes away. Krishna Surya Sama Maya Haya Andhakara, Yahan Krishna Tahan Maya Adhikara. That when the Krishna sun rises, then all the fog and the darkness, the ignorance, it dissipates. And automatically we become joyful. So we can maintain positivity when we're always in connection with Krishna. First of all, what does positivity mean? Some people think positivity just means, oh, okay, let's just keep a pleasant and a positive mood, even though, you know, everything is going downhill. You picture the band playing while the Titanic is sinking. You have that visual image in your head. You know, and so they're like, okay, let's keep up the good mood and the good spirits, but we know that the ship is sinking. So we're not speaking of that type of positivity. We're speaking of the positivity of understanding what is my actual nature, what is my actual situation. From a spiritual perspective, I am Sachit Ananda. I'm eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. That's money in the bank. Nobody can take that away from me. That is my inherent nature. Only if I become forgetful or compromised, then I will become fearful. In other words, if I'm in my inherent nature, in my natural setting, I will always be eternal, full of knowledge, and full of bliss. Why? Because I'm a child of Krishna. I'm a part and parcel of Krishna. And Krishna is all bliss. He's all love. So if I'm mindful of that, then I will also be blissful, and I will also be connected to that original source of light and love. But I become forgetful. Why? Because I identify with matter. I identify with the things of this world. And I think that I am my situation. The situational challenges that it caught up with me, I identify with that. And thus, I become compromised. So, right now, we think this is a very unusual scenario. It's a very uncertain situation, but actually it's not. Because if we were to read the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Vedic literatures, we would realize that there is nothing as certain as change. That anything that has been created will be destroyed. There's a continuous cycle of how material energy orchestrates and arranges and rearranges itself. Janma mrityu jara vyadi dukkha dosha darshanam. There's birth, death, old age, and disease. These four things are for certain. So once I know that for a fact, then I can already become peaceful, because I know that this body will perish. It's not a matter of if, it's simply a question of when and how. So that already takes a lot of tension out of the equation. And it makes us a little more serious about our spiritual practice, because we realize that I actually do have choices. The choice is, do I take up a spiritual path? Do I take up a spiritual practice? Do I want to be in touch with my inherent spiritual nature? Or do I want to struggle and become crushed by material energy? So that choice is always there. It's always ours to make. So Krishna consciousness is empowering us to always see things in their proper perspective. Now, some people may call that pessimistic. Would you agree? They will say, oh, you're talking about death and old age and disease, and it's not very inspiring. You're not very positive. But actually, this is positive, because unless you're realistic and you know what is going on, you have no leverage. You have no ability to deal with the situation at hand. You cannot actually navigate properly, but you're simply caught up in situational challenges, and you feel that it is a losing game, which is true in one sense, because materially speaking, no one gets out alive. Yet, if we see the higher dimension, we can understand that, just like here, I'm in this small room right now. And if I were to think that this room is all in all, this is everything I have, this is everything I know, just like a microbe or an insect or an ant, for them, this may be their universe. But for me as a human being, I know that I can just open this door and walk out, and there's a different reality. Does that make you feel better? Any of our audience would like to communicate or participate on that? Doesn't it make you feel better that you have a door in your room or in your house that you can walk out of?
Yeah. I mean, Krishna consciousness for me, it's really like, I mean, especially in the beginning, the overwhelmingness in the beginning becomes the norm, but it's just ever expansive. Like right when you think that you're comfortable in Krishna consciousness, I think if you're really sincerely trying to go inwards, it expands more. Like in one sense, when I found out I wasn't the body, there were higher planets, there were lower planets, and it's like now,
wow.
no big deal, Lord Brahma's here, you got the four Kumaras, you got Lord Shiva, but then it goes further into understanding what our relationship is with Krishna, our rasa, all these things. And it's just like your mind's constantly getting blown, but at the same time, we have to work with what we got. Maybe we are in this four-cornered room. Maybe we are in this house or on this certain side of town. So it's like we have to kind of find the balance between both things,
Oh,
we
yeah, I
are still in the
appreciate that.
material
Thank you,
world.
Bhagavan Nard. And that's why part of our topic today is, how can I make my four walls and what's in it more auspicious and more positive? Like, I have a choice in how I decorate or arrange my setting. Just like you have beautiful paintings of Krishna and books about spiritual topics, and there's a lot of light, beautiful scents. So it's a very uplifting, it's a very soothing, it's a very inspiring atmosphere, and it helps you to feel happy. Did you ever walk into one of those toilet or bathrooms in some big resort or some big 5-star hotel?
Mm-hmm.
And immediately walk in there, and there's like the plant and the music and the scent, and it all looks very nice and bright. There's lights and everything, and you think like you're in some person's temple room, or right?
Yeah.
And then you see the throne, like the altar. But yeah, because the focus is all about the body, So it kind of becomes almost like morbid, almost like it almost becomes like sarcastic, like you're celebrating the body. You're making this the big deal, and people celebrate everything, like what kind of clothes they wear, what kind of foods they eat, what kind of cars they drive. And that's really not such a exciting type of a topic, so to speak. But if we can tune into that Krishna conscious frequency, as you have mentioned, there's whole universes, there's whole galaxies, there's immense opportunities that open up to us that have before been completely unknown to us. And just like we're talking earlier on today about gaming, there is people who literally live their lives in the virtual world. Can you believe it or not? Some are blowing stuff up, some are trying to save the universe, some are just trying to build empires or compete with other empires. And they seemingly lose track of their personal identity, their surroundings, and anything that's going on. It's even known that there's people in Vegas who gamble and they don't want to leave their slot machine. So whatever they need to do, they do it right there. And sometimes people die right there on the chair. So very unfortunate situations. So we're very fortunate if we know that we do have opportunities, we do have options. There are choices available to us. And depending on what kind of association I expose myself to, I'll either hang out with the gamblers or with the drinkers or with the people who just want to sleep or get intoxicated, get wasted, or I'm looking for association that's actually expanding my consciousness. It's helping me understand what are my true prospects in life and how can I navigate, how can I avail myself of the highest opportunity, Krishna consciousness. Now, sometimes, as you've mentioned, that might seem to be a little bit frightening or, like mind-boggling because it's so much. Therefore, it's recommended that we, Shanai Shanai Uparamed, like in the Gita in the 6th, it is explained that this process should be practiced gradually. It's not like that we jump from where we are to where we want to go in one jump, but it is a gradual process. And so if we take this, like if you want to jump on a ladder, it's not a very good prospect to try to jump on a ladder. You just have to take one step at a time. And then once your foot is solid, then you take your foot up and you go to the next one. And then if you look back, you seem like, wow, what a journey. How much accomplishment. But initially it seems like I'm not getting anywhere. I'm just doing baby steps. So do not become discouraged because it seems like you're not really moving far. But we should never underestimate the compound interest of our spiritual practice. And that's a beautiful thing about maintaining positivity, that if you actually want to maintain something, you cannot just hold your position. Did you notice? If you want to maintain form, you want to maintain shape, you want to maintain enthusiasm, you have to actually stretch and try to improve. And by the natural force of time and gravity and diminution, things tend to deteriorate and tend to, again, the law of gravity sucks us all back into the soil. But if I keep on my enthusiasm and my positivity, then even though it seems like the material side of things is gradually diminishing, but because the spiritual side is tremendously increasing, that will do much more than make up for the lacking on the material side. Just like the Goswamis of Vrindavan, it's not that they forcefully tried to stop eating and sleeping. They were too positive in their Krishna consciousness. They were too absorbed in hearing and chanting. They were too busy in writing books and engaging in Krishna consciousness that they forgot to eat and sleep. I know it sounds unimaginable for a mundane mind, but I'm sure we have all had glimpses of such experiences where, at least for a good amount of time, we forgot to eat, to sleep. We even forgot our body. We forgot our pain. We forgot where we were. And that without the influence of drugs or any external circumstance. It was simply because we were connected with the spiritual potency, with the all-knowing, all-loving, and eternal potency of the Supreme Lord. Tushti pushti kshut apayanugasam. The natural side effect of Krishna consciousness is that it is tasteful, it is joyful performed. Our hunger becomes alleviated, and all the other things that have been troubling us, they go away. So that is a natural benefit from the practice of Krishna consciousness. I don't know whether that satisfies your inquiry.
Well, it's just, yeah, I mean, sustenance, it requires so much balance, so much adjustment, so much adjustment in the sense that curveballs are thrown at you and you just have to respond with kind of tactful decisions. I asked Giraj Maharaj one time, I said, well, Maharaj, like sometimes I have to make these decisions on a whim, like I don't want to gamble. And, how do I know if I'm gambling or if I'm making the right decision? And he said that we have to be tactful in our decision. It was more or less, that was the answer. I forgot exactly what the word was. It has to be a calculated decision. We have to be calculative when exploring our options rather than just kind of, so what I took from it was that I have to kind of explore it from all angles, and I have to slow down sometimes. And that's a part of sustenance, sustaining. It's so easy to create something. It's so easy to have an idea, right? But then I started understanding that how is it going to be maintained? And I think for me personally, that was more or less what's allowed me to kind of slow down and become more practical, is I started thinking more about the maintenance of the project and what comes along with it, the people. How can we ultimately take care of people in the long term rather than just creating something exciting for them initially? And that's a tough challenge for me because it's not so fun. Like, it's so easy to just come up with an idea, to just, go out there, and it's a lot of enthusiasm in the beginning, but to maintain enthusiasm is like, wow, like that's a challenge.
Thank you, Bhagavan Nard. Yes, I appreciate all your points. It's a fact. If you go too fast and you have too much speed, you lose control. You ever seen those ships, those little yachts that go super fast and then they go too fast and then they just flip, and they just crash. So don't hydroplane. You have to be grounded. Otherwise, you cannot really navigate in life. So sometimes, never waste a good crisis. Right now, we have time. We have time to think, to strategize, to take a step back. So, of course, when you have a decision at hand that has to be taken right now, you have to know what is the right course of action. But in bigger topics, we should always consult Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. It's not that we just act out of impulse or out of the mode of passion, but we should avail ourselves of the guidance that is available. And ultimately, Krishna in our heart also, he will help us. He will guide us to make the right choice. I like what you said about, instead of trying to always expand, thinking more along the lines of how we can maintain, because that's Vishnu. How can we take care of people? How can we create a situation that's actually attractive for people? I talked to one of my friends, and one of his school classmates is now a mayor in a pretty decent sized town. So when he met her at their high school reunion, he asked her, so it must be really difficult to be a mayor, like, how do you do this? I mean, so many people, so many projects. And her response was quite interesting. She said, actually, it's not such a big of a deal. The only thing you have to do is you have to create a situation that attracts long-term investors. Now you can frame that and hang that on the wall. Create a situation that attracts long-term investors. If we succeed in creating an opportunity or a situation where people can feel, I could do this forever. I could do this for life, like I want to be here. This is good. Then it really starts gaining momentum. Otherwise, if the only question on people's mind is, how can I get out of here as fast as possible? Like, how can I go somewhere else? How can I do something else? We won't have much success. So how do we create long-term investors? By not just creating situational arrangements, but by building meaningful, honest, sincere, and loving relationships that are attractive, where people feel, yeah, I would like to be part of this community. Have you ever stepped into a shop or into a company and the salesperson was immediately starting to speak badly about their boss or about the company? Has this ever happened to you? And they're completely like not in tune with what's going on there. It really diminishes the faith, the trust. So maintenance is Vishnu. How to be always conscious of Krishna.
What about goal setting?
Yeah,
Momentum.
all great. That's all wonderful. But you have to temper it. You have to, you do your goal setting, but then you also have to make what's called a feasibility study. You have to make an honest assessment. Otherwise, you'll be just chasing the dream. And some people do that for their whole life and they never get anything done. So goal setting is good, yet it requires a little bit of strategic support for it to actually be practical. Like Prabhupada, he had big goals. He wanted to spread Krishna consciousness everywhere at once. So how did he do it? How did he pull it off? He figured out a plan on how to get to America, to the place which was predominantly in the mode of passion, where people thought, let's do the impossible, let's go out into the world and make the Hare Krishna mantra known in all countries and continents. But Prabhupada worked strategically and diligently, and not everything that he did immediately worked out. He was ready to adjust and fine-tune. He was very perceptive in what was going on, and he was able to take on the feedback and actually implement it and improve things. As an example, he was primarily engaged in magazine publication until somebody told him he should write books, they're more permanent. And he picked it up immediately. Other person told him that if he were to go on a walk, his health would be better. He immediately picked it up and he did it. In India, when they started Harinam and distributing magazines, people were throwing money at them, but he created some bad press, some bad image. Immediately, Prabhupada stopped it, and he instituted life membership. Go company to company, home to home, and give people a set of books and speak to them and get a sizable contribution. So Prabhupada was open to strategize, but not just in terms of talking about it, but through implementation and feedback. It means we have to be open for suggestions and not, dog stubborn, like our neighbors' dogs, that, they can't help it. They just got to yap. They just have to jump and bark. It's just the way they are. So to actually be focused on the goal, but to be open about the methods of how we'll achieve that goal, then Krishna can play the magic and he can guide us in our lives. Otherwise, if we become too fixated and too stubborn on the way we want to do things, it's going to take a very long time, a lot of pain, a lot of hard work, and we most likely will still fail. Does that help?
Yeah, there was a point, since Dayananda Prabhu's here too, I wanted to get his take, where I was taking some courses. I'm currently taking some sort of strategic planning courses or whatever online. And
just before we get into the planning mode, do you want to continue with the recording and make this part of it, or?
no, it's nothing too, it's just a quick point. It's very generalized. It's nothing too detailed or intimate.
Go ahead.
So, like, there's a certain point where we can plan, and I wanted to see if Dayananda Prabhu could chime in on this as well, because he made this point to me. There's a certain point where we can plan, but I remember him saying something along the lines where you shouldn't plan too much. You have to leave some sort of wiggle room or some sort of space there to where things can just develop. You know, it's like we can become so over analytical over a situation to where we don't even get the job done, you know, like you said, paralysis by analysis. So there's this tendency that we can get so organized, we can become so driven, we can become so much in tune with vision that we forget Krishna's even there. And it almost feels like the whole mission becomes impersonal, but it's like you're working so hard, you just forget that last factor of Krishna doing his magic. And I don't know, I just kind of wanted to explore more of what you meant by that, Dayananda Prabhu. Like, if you would like to chime in a little bit more with your experience, because you were talking about some certain things that you had done in Iran as well, to where, you know, you have to let things, I guess, kind of naturally take their course.
I have to unmute. That's okay, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. A few things come to mind. I can't remember specifically what we were talking about, but from a sort of from professional point of view, it's, you can't, you can't plan too much. You can't plan too far ahead, certainly. And you have to have points at which you revisit your plan. So if you have some 5-year plan or something, you have to make sure that every 6 months or a year you revisit your plan, and you have to be ready to make serious revisions. You can't just, I mean, whether you believe in Krishna or not, you at least you believe that there's nothing that man cannot fix his direction so rigidly that, you know, that revisions are they must be there. So that's sort of one thing about planning, just sort of practical, professional, mundane. As far as like Krishna's interference, I think that I'm a big believer in planning. One of my favorite stories is from the Panchatantra, where 3 fish were swimming in their pond, and they heard that the hunter was, or the fisherman was coming, and the one fish, in the mode of goodness, he dove to the bottom of the pond, and the other 2 were still just swimming around. Especially one was, his name actually was Yad Bhavishya. I forgot the name of the other 2, but Yad Bhavishya means c'est la vie. So, meaning whatever will be. So they were both caught, those 2 that were swimming around, and the one that was just, one was in the mode of passion. He was a lot more prepared. He was clever and he was capable. So he jumped out of the boat at the first opportunity. The other one was finished. He was just head in the clouds. So that sort of indicates forethought. There must be forethought. You can't just leave everything to fate. So I like that story, that if somebody's in goodness is thoughtful and and careful. But yeah, you can't just say that everything will yield to my plan. To be inflexible is not practical. I don't know. Does that help? I don't know.
Yeah, and I was thinking, like, how often am I exactly in the place I thought I would be a year ago? Like, never, like I'm I make so many plans, and it's just like a complete, almost like illusion to think that it's all going to be exactly how I envision it. And so it goes back to what Navina Prabhu was saying about, like, I've never really thought about that per se so much. I know it's crossed my mind, maybe, I don't know. But sustenance is adjustment. It's just being able to navigate and adjust. It's not, I have this tendency, maybe others do, of thinking sustenance is just like an easy coast. Everything's going to be smooth. I've got all my systems in place, and hey, no problem. But it's like a constant second by second, minute by minute, day by day adjustment to what's kind of being thrown at you. And in one sense, the more that easier that you're able to adjust to things, then the better you have control over the will. So if
I
you're
like
not
that a lot. I mean, adjustment, speaking in terms of like Prabhupada.
adaptability.
Yeah, when he came initially, I heard from early disciples that he was not that audible. They had a real hard time grasping his accent. But Prabhupada, he worked on it, even in his writings. Sometimes different secretaries have commented that, Prabhupada, he worked with the theme, he worked with the topic, he worked with the language. He was not shy in being open for that guidance. Now, as far as the plan making goes, you actually don't have a 1 year or 5 year plan unless you work for a big corporation where everything is like, done on a very large scale. But in our frame of reference, if you're dealing with startups or new projects, all you actually have is a 90-day plan. That's all you have. And you have to revisit it like regularly, at least weekly. And you see how these, startups, they have regular companies and group meetings because they have to constantly adjust and tweak and find a way forward. Otherwise, they're completely off track. And as you've said, after a year, we're not in the same space that we thought we were, which confirms the saying that all plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. Have you heard that before?
No.
No, but I agree 100%.
Yeah, because the plan, screw the plan, it's not going to work out, but you have to plan. You gotta be prepared. And then, as you said, Nard, in the process of planning and implementing, you adjust, you fine tune, you hone in, you refine, you really get right into the zone where you have the maximum impact, the maximum grit, the maximum exposure. And that is sweet surrender zone. That is where Krishna comes into the magic and where he opens up those opportunities. I mean, if you hear that story of how Macmillan, took the Bhagavad Gita, I mean, you can't make up stuff like that, even if you're a fiction writer. How Prabhupada got his visa and his ticket and how he made it to America. That's all sweet surrender zone. That's all like the magic happening. And if you go in there with an MBA attitude of like, okay, we take 2 of this and 3 of that and 5 of that, and we mix them and then we, triangulate, arbitrage, it is not going to work. So, and we can see, because what are we trying to achieve? We're trying to spread Krishna consciousness. It's not like we're trying to sell the next, shampoo or something. So if we don't acknowledge that Krishna is the doer and he's the magic, and we're open to that guidance, we make ourselves available to be guided by Krishna, then it will be very difficult.
Well, also, I think that especially in our situation here, we're entrepreneurs, you know, and there's kind of a different set of rules for entrepreneurs. I agree that this 90-day flexibility, and it's like if you're in a religious organization or any big organization, that yeah, these sort of structural rules apply, but for an entrepreneur, you have to really be flexible. You know, you can't make, I mean, to cite some old name, Michael Jordan, you know, you can't tell Michael Jordan that there's certain rules. You have to only approach the basket a certain way, or there's only 5 ways to do it, or so, you know, you just have to be on your toes and see the opportunity. That's my opinion anyway. Entrepreneurial rules, kind of.
Thank you. Any closing thoughts from any of our participants?
I never really thought, like, I've never really taken it like that, but I've heard a lot of devotees saying this word, entrepreneurial or entrepreneur, with what we're doing. I was told, hey, what you're doing, you're a bit of an entrepreneur, which I find myself outside of my preaching with my side business and hustles, like, yeah, maybe I have that kind of thing. Or like, there's a tendency to kind of be bogged down by the word independent. You know, I've been told that a lot. Well, you're very independent. So I think this word of entrepreneurship is something that's very empowering. And I think it should be encouraged within our movement. We have a
Absolutely. That's why I give a whole seminar about how to be a spiritual entrepreneur. It's part of the leadership course. And to me, Srila Prabhupada is the perfect spiritual entrepreneur. And he was very independent in one sense, because he was innovative and he was really redefining the rules of the game. At the same time, internally, he was 100% loyal to the Guru Parampara. So that's, for many, that's kind of like, it seems like a conundrum, you know, it seems like a complete, but they're not mutually exclusive. You can be completely in line with Parampara at the same time. You're totally innovative, you're pushing the limits, and it seems like you're quite independent in the way how you navigate, how you operate. So I wouldn't take that as a criticism. I would rather see that actually as a compliment if people tell you that. You can still be a faithful follower of Parampara.
I appreciate that, those 2 words, spiritual entrepreneur. I think it's relevant, especially with today's society. Young people are having to figure out ways to make money, to sustain themselves, and people are performing entrepreneurship in many different ways now to get their lives together. It's not so typical that you just graduate. There's so many young people that's the new way to live, is to do a little bit of each thing. And I think that is something that we can piggyback off of within our institution, within our mission, is promoting that sense of entrepreneurship. It's very attractive and relevant, and there's not enough of it going on. So I agree. I really appreciate that term, you know.
Yeah, thank you. And nothing speaks as loud as success. Nothing attracts more than success. So you create something, even if it's small, but that is successful, that is tasteful, that is well done. And people will recognize it. They will say, hey, yeah, you know, like, I like that. I dig it. So to me, that's Krishna consciousness, and that's the spreading of Krishna consciousness.
Anybody else? Nardi, do you have anything you'd like to add? She's probably busy cooking.
Sorry, I was muted.
No problem.
Well, there were a lot of really great points. But one of the things that was sticking to my mind and that I'll probably take away from everything is when you spoke about positivity and redefined positivity, not just like, oh, everything's hunky-dory, everything's great, you're just gonna be positive. No, there's a totally different definition to what positivity is. And I was really grateful for that. And I think that's something I'm gonna keep with me.
Can I add to
you all
that? Like,
for participating? Yes, Nard?
for me personally, that's been like the game changer in my life. Is it's so easy to see the negative coin of things. It's like we want to fix those things immediately, so we seek them out, but you can't get caught up in it. You know, it's like I have a tendency, and I've chilled out with it a lot, to where it's like, okay, I accept this is good, whatever. I'm gonna zero in on this, but I've been learning to not do it in a critical way that's damaging, but we want to uplift people rather than to just bash them over the head and be overly critical. And I think that that's an art form. That's something I'm still trying to learn, is to affect people with positive reinforcement and enthusiasm, encouragement, rather than to just kind of give them the old heavy hand. And especially with today, you know, we were talking the other day about how sensitive people are right now. So I don't know, just something personal that I'm trying to learn more about as far as that particular style and mood. It's attractive and people respond to it. You know, I see Vaisheshika Prabhu do it so much, and it's like, man, I've been around him one time and I was saying something that was kind of negative about myself, like, oh, this is difficult. And he was like, you can do it. You know, he gave me one of those, and I just felt like, whoa, it was such a shock to be like, like I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting like, oh, well, yeah, that's a hellish situation, or that's difficult. And I just remember him saying, well, that's awesome, you can get out there. But it was genuinely felt. We were on a little walk, and it shocked me. I was taken back, like, well, can I really do that? You know, it was like my whole ego was shocked. And it kind of tricked me into thinking that it was possible, whatever it was, something minor at the time, but I think our words can really have an effect on the ether like that. So positivity.
Yeah, I think that sometimes it's difficult for people to accept a negative thing, and I would think of it almost in the same category as kind of a chastisement. And some people have a lot of difficulty with chastisement, and it takes a long time to break through that. When in my relationship with Prabhupada, for either consciously or just intuitively or whatever, Prabhupada took 9 years before he ever chastised me. So, and he had plenty of opportunity. So I think that it's good to be negative with people, and it's good to chastise people, but with great care. I mean, you have to build on, you know, for every like 5 positive, 5, you know, encouragements, 5 whatever, or maybe 100, you know, encouragement, and then finally, why the heck did you do it that way? You know what I mean? It's like you have to build on something.
Okay. Thank you.
That's my observation anyway. I'm just talking about people, dealing with people. I've thought a lot about our dealings with other devotees, and you know, we have to pay devotees now to do things. And I was thinking that the payment I think devotees are looking for is relationships. That if we feel connected and we feel like we're appreciated, we feel fulfilled in our relationship with the sadhu sangha, with the whatever we're representing, the San Antonio ISKCON, then we can take less payment, you know, in terms of money. I mean, it's just a practical matter, but I thought about that a lot, that relationships are the currency that we pay devotees.
Thank you all for sharing and contributing and churning the topic of today.